So, good morning once again, everyone. It is an absolutely awesome day. And welcome to the first Sunday of February of 2021. February is considered the month of love. So, my talk today is called I Choose Love. However, the kind of love that I'm speaking of today is not the love that we send out to others, but it's the love that we send to ourselves. When we fly, we're told to put the air masks on ourselves first and then help those around us to put theirs on. And why? Because if we ourselves don't have any air coming in, we can't help anyone else. And it's the same with love. How can we truly be loving to another when we ourselves don't feel that love inside of us? So, as with the air masks, fill yourself with love first and then you could be the love for others. A friend of mine, David Kyle, studied under different shamans and has traveled to Peru several times, for working with these shamans and getting instruction. And he's written a beautiful book called Energy Teachings of the Three. And in there, he writes, love is a universal force that all beings experience directly because love is the fundamental building block of all life in existence. In there, he writes that the inherent nature of love is the fundamental energy that is everything. And he talks about five aspects of love, which he calls five pillars of love. And these are appreciation, compassion, forgiveness, kindness, and gratitude. So, one of the things that we have to remember is that what we hold in mind is expressed in the outer world around us. Joel Goldsmith once wrote in his book, Living Now, because the mind will express whatever we put into it. By keeping it filled with God, it expresses only as good in the body. Mind is the substance or the essence of which the body and our cells are formed. And it is for this reason that if we entertain truth in the mind, we experience harmony in our lives. Whatever it is that we accept in mind manifests in our body and affairs. The mind is pure, the body itself is pure, but it's the kind of food we take into our minds that determines the nature of mind, body, and affairs. And then he talked about Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 3. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. So he goes on to state that the more we feed the mind the word of God, the more harmonious the body and our lives become. And he states the amount of hours in which we keep the mind filled with truth determines how peaceful and how harmonious our lives will be. He states a little consistent practice of this will reveal how everything that comes within range of our consciousness is changed. So, to me, these five aspects of love that David writes about in his book are the aspects of love that I feel that we need to keep our minds filled with so that in order to, as Goldsmith writes, the mind will express whatever we put into it. So if God is love, then these five aspects of love to me are what we need to give to ourselves first and fill our minds with. And each of these is an aspect that we need to develop within ourselves for ourselves before we can expand on out into the world. So let's start with appreciation. What is it about yourself that you can appreciate? And I'm going to ask an even different question. What is it about your body that you can appreciate? Or are there more things about your body that you don't like? Are you a little bit overweight? Are you a little out of shape? Do you have a little trouble hearing or seeing or walking or whatever? And do you get frustrated about those things? Wish you sometimes could just leave this body behind because it isn't what it used to be 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. You know, I'm reminded of a conference that I went to probably about 30 years ago now. And one of the speakers was a woman who had been locked in a wheelchair for many, many years. She told us that, the only thing that she had control over was her right hand. And with that, she could maneuver the electric wheelchair she was in around. She said at the time, she hated her body and that she was really angry with her body most of the time. She stated that she went to a lecture and she heard that loving what we did have in our lives, no matter what the rest was, but to love just what we did have. So she said she began loving her right hand and she began thanking it for the way it did work. Just holding love and appreciation for whatever her right hand could do. And she related that, it was sometime later that she realized that she could move more of her right hand than she could before, and that she was starting to actually move her right arm. And that feeling was coming back into her right arm that she had not had for a long time. And she said that before long, she could actually pick up her right arm and maneuver it around. And realizing that it was loving this hand and arm that was making things change, she began loving her left hand just as it was. And after a while, she said she was able to move her left hand and it just went from there. It took her 2 years of just loving the different parts of her body, but it came to the point where she could actually walk again. And then when we saw her at the conference, she walked on stage with no help at all, walked around the stage speaking like she had always been doing it. And for us, it was really amazing to see the pictures of her in the wheelchair with her left hand all curled up into her, and then to see her on stage moving fluidly. And she gave all the credit to just holding love and appreciation for each part of her body as she went through her time of healing. So, a question for you. Can you give love and appreciation to this body of yours, no matter what it's like? And in doing so, it would give it the energy that it needs to keep functioning in this world to the best of its ability. So, how about compassion? It's the next one in David's list. Can you be compassionate with yourself when things are not going the way you want them to go? And we all know that not everything goes our way in the manner we want it to, or in the timeline that we want it to. Do we get upset with ourselves and events because of it, or do we hold compassion for ourselves? We are impatient at times. We do want things differently. But do we understand for ourselves that we still are in these human bodies and we still have human emotions that come up? And it's okay to get frustrated. It's okay to have all these feelings. So, do you move to loving yourself through them and then have compassion for yourself because you did have emotions that you wish you didn't? So, just what is compassion? In his book, The Energy Teachings of the Three, David wrote, in compassion, one attunes to the frequency of the other. But if we're talking about compassion for ourselves, then who do we tune into? Charles Filmer once wrote on compassion, divine mind is the one and only reality. Be still and tune within to the one great source. So, to have true compassion for ourselves, we need it to tune in to source, to God, the one, whatever name you want to use, and allow that love and compassion come into your own being. And then that, of course, brings us to number 3 in David's list, forgiveness. David writes that forgiveness is an energy of release. He writes that forgiveness is the energy that releases the binding structure of the projections that have woven into our ego identity that you call yourself. You know, so many times we find it easier to forgive someone else than it is to forgive ourselves. So, how do we forgive ourselves when we feel we've done something that we can consider so very wrong? And sometimes, no matter how hard we try, there seems to be that little bit of something that we cling on to, that we continue to judge and condemn ourselves with. First John chapter 1, verse 5 states, "This is the message we have heard from him and declare to you. God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all." Edgar Casey once stated, "Judgment is darkness in our soul. The light of God is the forgiveness washing all things clean." So, with First John stating that God is light and in him there is no darkness at all, and Casey says that judgment is the darkness of our soul and the light of God is the forgiveness washing all things clean, then it seems to me that the more of the light of God that we bring in, the more forgiveness is actually coming into us and dissolving even that last little residue of guilt and judgment that we have toward ourselves or someone else for having done something that still haunts us. And of course, how do we do that? It's by meditation, just sitting, becoming quiet, and asking for the light of God to come within us. And then just sit in that light. Just sit there, just bathing yourself in the light. Goldsmith once stated that the longer you just sit in the energy of the light, the more our energy field clears automatically. And the faster and easier our life changes for the better. And that's all we have to do. Just spend more and more time sitting in the light. You know, and let's face it, with this pandemic, we all have more time on our hands than we ever have had. So just take some of that extra time and spend it sitting in the light. And that brings us to the next aspect that David talks about, that of kindness. He writes that kindness is an attitude of acceptance that holds that whatever the circumstance or condition, you respond without judgment or a stance of superiority. That at the energetic level, kindness is an aspect of love as an energy that opens the quality of insight. To be kind is to open your energy field to perceive needs or to simply extend to another the sake of goodwill and caring. So this question is, can you be kind to yourself? Of course you can. We can set ourselves goals of what we want in life, but sometimes those goals don't work out the way we want them to, or we find that achieving those goals is harder than we thought. And kindness and gentleness to ourselves is that aspect that says, that we care about ourselves and that it's okay to not meet the goals that we had wanted to at the time we wanted to do it. And sometimes, in order to be kind to ourselves, we actually have to say no to another person. There are times that, and we've all done this, in order to please another person, we put ourselves into a situation where we really don't feel totally comfortable. It isn't our energetic vibration, and we really don't want to be there. And if that's the case, then be kind to yourself. And we just have to learn to say no sometimes. And yet, on the other hand, sometimes to be really kind to ourselves, we have to say yes to ourselves. To keep our bodies healthy, we know we have to say yes to healthier eating. We have to say yes to some kind of exercise. We have to say yes to meditation. And we also have to say yes to fun and love and joy and laughter. We have to say yes to all the good that God has for us. We have to say yes to all the different aspects of love that we're discussing today, and not just hearing about them or reading about them, but actually putting them into practice. To say yes to doing each of these and holding each of these for ourselves. And finally, we come to gratitude. David states that gratitude is what love floats on. He says that gratitude is fluid and moves quickly to any person or situation rapidly and easily. He wrote that gratitude is all encompassing and it shapes your life to be in rhythm and harmony with all of life's experiences. Gratitude reveals the gift of everything. And he writes that joy, happiness, and peace are the natural basic experiences when you look at life through the lens of gratitude. And that what may seem to be negative when we're viewing it through the lens of gratitude is seen as a teaching, a gift, and a means of emerging from the illusion of existence. So I began my talk today by sharing with you the story of a woman who had been confined to a wheelchair and how she began loving her right hand, the only part of her that she had control over, thanking it for working the way it did and holding that love and appreciation for just whatever her right hand could do. She was thanking it. She was in gratitude for it working as it did. And then in time, because of that gratitude, her whole entire body began to respond to that and healed itself to the point of her being able to walk and move without restriction. But the key here is she did it wholeheartedly. She didn't just say, "Oh, thank you for working." She felt gratitude. She felt love. She felt gratitude that her hand could work and did work. So, not just hearing about these things, but taking them in and feeling them is what the key is to having them work for you. Albert Schweitzer once wrote that gratitude, ascending from man to God, is the supreme transaction between heaven and earth. And Meister Eckhart wrote, if the only prayer you said in your whole life was thank you constantly, that would suffice. And Ernest Holmes wrote, gratitude is one of the chief graces of human existence and is crowned in heaven with a consciousness of unity. And Emily Cady wrote, there is something about the mental act of thanksgiving that seems to carry the human mind far beyond the region of doubt into the clear atmosphere of faith and trust, where all things are possible. And finally, Stretton Smith, a Unity minister, wrote in the 4T program that he created, gratitude is our expression of acknowledging the oneness of universal energy working in cooperation with your desires. So my question is, what can you be grateful for today? In this cold weather that we've been having, do you have a heater that works? Do you have hot running water? Do you have food to put on your table? Or more personally, as the woman I spoke about did you give thanks for all the parts of your body that are working well? Do you give thanks for the eyesight that you do have, for the hearing that you do have, for these arms and legs and hands and feet that are working well for you? Wallace Wattles once wrote, our gratitude liberates an energy within us that immediately expands into the formless substance where it is instantly returned to us in kind. So let's take this thing called love into our minds and hearts today for a time of meditation. So I invite you just to sit back, close your eyes, and take a deep breath in. As I stated earlier, we can't love another any more than we can love ourselves. So let's just spend a few moments loving ourselves. If you desire to, you can place your hand over your heart and just silently say to yourself, I love you. You may want to close your eyes and really take this into the depths of yourself. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. And feel that love coming from you to you. Take that love in and accept it and feel blessed by it. And now think of one part of your body, just one part that might not be functioning as you wish it were. And just say, I love you to that part of your body. I love you. I love you. I love you. And now think of another part of your body. And if you want to, you can even put your hand on that part of your body. I love you. I love you. I love you. All is in perfect divine order. And as we send love to these different parts of our bodies, they feel that love. And it's that love that brings each part back to its perfect wholeness. I love you. I love you. I love you. And now opening your eyes, just come back to here and now. So my wish for you is that you may be filled with this beautiful, beautiful, supreme transaction and connection with Source for all of your days. So happy February, everyone. Happy Love Month. Happy joy to all of you. Namaste, everyone. Much, much love.